game?
So, sir, mostly may kwento ako dito how I came up to this form and I've been um thinking about stakeholders again since actually this site this structure was inspired by something quite separate from the research I did last week. Since it came to my mind wherein when you were questioning about the stakeholders, that it seemed quite hang on sir, someone's calling back. Um, so about this form, it was inspired by something else that wasn't directly um related anymore to deaf architecture. It was sometime last night I realized that most of the architecture that I was expressing with the deaf architecture can be quite pragmatic in a sense. Like I've seen um designs wherein in preschool uh in a preschool that they kind of play with the anthropometrics of the child and the teacher and the workers and even the idea of play in terms of putting into the architecture. So I was like thinking, will this be a project that I'd be excited to do? And then it just came to me that there was this other potential that is directly related to the stakeholders to the community. And then the location, I kind of moved it. In in my in my community, there's this open field nearby the clubhouse, and I realized the problems were mostly eh, um well, not really a problem. It's just there's a sense of community that I see children playing, or like right nowadays more and more people are wanting to sell their personal goods. So this this architecture was inspired by that, and including the mongo seeds, which can be used as toge. And the process of making toge is that it should be in a dark it's bathed with water and on a cloth, and then it's sprouted in a dark space, or just put something to cover the basin in order for it to sprout and have the toge that we all eat whenever when we go in like a Chinese takeout or something. So going to the farm, what I was explaining, since it's still somewhat connected to the community and the birds. So the birds, when they eat beans, um, if I'm since I'm trying to increase the presence of birds, the bird population, it's high in protein, and it increases their sexual drive. So in order to for birds to consume the mongo beans, it should be sprouted a little bit so it's softer. And it's kind of like we're eating toge. So in a sense, the community can benefit, the birds can benefit. And these are the if you see the plan, I mean the elevation, these circles, these pods are actually the pods wherein it's kept in a dark space to create to allow the seeds to mature in those conditions in order to create toge. It will take about a week in order to create. So within the perimeter of this 25 by 25 meters, I tried maxing out the space in order to yield to have a high yield, but also create somewhat an extension of the clubhouse. And before the pandemic, this the the clubhouse was also used quite often as a church. So if you look at this pillar, like this is the first floor, like the ground floor once you enter, and then it's elevated from the grassy land of the adjacent to the clubhouse. and then these pods, it creates this sense of cathedral-like experience, since the in terms of the dimensions from floor to ceiling, it's about 5 meters. That I chose to make it quite tall in order to make it feel quite extravagant, kind of the feeling what you can get when you go to churches with large pillars. But instead, these pillars are also quite functional. So I thought of ways how can I harvest water, and the usual answer is like by rain, and and another reason why it's quite prism like, besides collecting rain, I still haven't fully developed yet, but there is this technology called like solar um, water collection. So through condensation and heat, in order for water to be, it's actually drinkable. But then the main idea for this program is to water the mango seeds. And so during amihan, habagat, or whether dry or wet season, it will still be able to create and collect water regardless of what happens. And then I wasn't able to express quite properly with in terms of the detailing here yet, since it was still quite of an exploration, and I'm not sure if this is kind of a um, this is a form that I could still continue exploring. If you could see, zoom in here, these circular kind of like I'm not sure if you could see my mouse, but the circular kind of a tube holding the pipes. These are pipes that for the water collection. Um, I also considered like there's a dual process of water filtration that's happening. So this is kind of the area where like the sand, the usual simple separation of the water, the silt of the dirty rainwater or whatever is being collected before it gets processed to the pods. And further, after using the water of the what do you call this? After using the water of the mungo seeds, it could be further processed into this the basement. So this is actually a hidden basement where it's kind of a reflection of what's above, but then more of the collection of water that is further processed that can be used again, but for human consumption, or in case of in regards to the location where I placed, I should have shown the site, but adjacent to it is actually the swimming pool of the clubhouse. So instead of creating this um, amenities that we have to pay because of the water, and of course the maintenance will always be there, it's kind of like reusing and saving water in order to be reused for the general community. And so that's the basic idea of how the plant architecture is going to be applied. But then for as for the other programs of these two other spaces, if you could look closely, there are door frames, somewhat like frames, door frames, which it had screen patterns, but wasn't able to export it because it was heavy. It's kind of inspired also by the Filipino architecture, wherein if you look at the kind of the rattan kind of patterns, and then these are pasted within these frame-like structures, which are able to be configured around the space. Like what do you call this? There's when you're playing this game in the puzzle, kind of like puzzle pieces that you're shifting, and you could rearrange the doors in order to create a space that is well, let's say the pandemic takes a little bit longer, and then this space is very programmable in a way that it could be used as a yoga space, it could be used as um like a garage sale, which happens like almost monthly before the pandemic. And right now, like if since we're slowly transitioning towards the end, hopefully the end of the pandemic, to the new normal, now that the my community kind of has this knowledge that we actually sell things within our homes. So um further extending that presence and creating this stronger relationship even after the pandemic, um this space kind of shows that it will bring the still bring the community together, but if it's still within the COVID restrictions, there are still kind of these dividers that help somewhat help create distances. So yeah, sir. So um that's it, sir. With what I have. Oh, one last thing was um how can I cover the structure, because I didn't want to introduce too much. I didn't want to introduce walls since um there was also another potential behind this architecture within the spaces wherein it's kind of extended with the wood slats extended, is that it could be placed for other vegetation, perhaps with my gumamela in order for other invertebrates or insects to come through. It was this screen wall. It's not exactly a wall. It's kind of like a PVC plastic that is kind of opaque, so that if you notice that the architecture that I've introduced isn't really the type that it's an um for a space for living. It's more of a space for gathering and allowing birds even to enter the spaces. That's why I didn't want to introduce boundaries like um, that they could fly underneath and go around the space. So yeah, but then still somewhat protect the area that can be used during harsh times, hot times, and so yeah, sir. That's all I have to show. And it's still developing. It's still an idea that I'm still developing, and I was wondering if this is a direction that um our studio is kind of aiming for. So yeah, yan lang, sir.
Um,
Sige, just go ahead lang, wait ah. I just need to fix my table lang.
okay.
Clean my table.
Okay. Let's wait for you.
Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, game.
Okay. So last week actually I remember you mentioning how I kind of needed a diagram to show the program of how the flower picking and to the process of tea making would work out. So at first I actually came up with this diagram where I thought that I'd really want to make a sun tunnel in my structure and have the drying process centralized in one area. But then, kind of thinking about it, I kind of created this diagram instead, thinking about how spreading the drying process, of the flowers in different parts that are exposed to the suns at different um, times in different seasons would be more effective and can kind of create this circulation of how we could kind of promote people to create their machuca tile designs in a certain area and then kind of circulate around each drying space. So then, yeah. So this is actually the size of my lot where I created a grid, and one cube is actually 1 by 1 meter. And I created this to be able to kind of divide the space and distribute the space to different purposes. So then here actually, this is the first ground floor. Oh, oops. The ground floor where I labeled it by numbers saying the different functions. So then for these small boxes, I think you could see my cursor. These are actually the private tea rooms where I wanted to kind of have it um, be separate from the main tea room where people can actually be secluded from the different like public spaces in the area, which is separate from this big space, which is the main tea room, which include the toilet as well. And like number 3, which is the washing room and also the storage unit. A washing room can be like a minor washing room that is accessible to the private tea rooms in the private tea rooms in the outside portion. And I wanted to create this also because I wanted the ground floor to be kind of open to the space and not really have an enclosed area that felt very exclusive to the rest of the park. So that's what I wanted to do. And for the fourth part, this is actually the drying space, which is right next to and accessible to the main tea room. So yeah, I kind of placed it in this area because these are one of the main um, places that are affected by the sun during the summer season. And so yeah, this is actually the second floor, which is the main library. So then I kind of wanted the drying room, which I'll explain later, drying area pala, that I'll explain later, that would be the main access point to the second floor. Um, Kind of thinking about it, I kind of wanted to create a ramp instead because thinking about how it's a senior park and it should be accessible to seniors that may not be able to walk up really steep stairs or not be able to walk upstairs at all. It would be very a good idea to have a ramp instead. And so yeah, after that, thinking about that, I kind of also created this big space where it's all connected and not really separated, where there is the main library and the reading area. And yeah, also a separate drying area from the main drying area where it's also affected by and yeah, affected by the sun. And so it would kind of be able to maximize the amount of flower drying in the space. So yeah, that balcony in the second floor. And altogether it kind of created this like 3D figure. And it's actually kind of what I wanted to look like, but then not necessarily the final figure. But then I kind of want to start with this 3D diagram to, start off my process. Yeah, it was kind of difficult for me to kind of think of like a form, but then I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. But then I'll kind of explore more on it later on, hopefully. And so I also kind of made massing illustrations of how I wanted to feel with the people around it because it was kind of hard for me to um, really understand and feel what it would be like for the people to walk around the space without actually illustrating it. So then what I did was kind of create like a massing illustration of how it would look like also with the plants around it. So as I mentioned before, even I wanted the the butterfly pea vines to kind of be like an exterior wall surrounding the entire structure. So that's what I wanted to show there, where the vines would actually, like as you could see here, it would fall. So the plant, it will be mainly planted from the top for the vines to fall down, which is quite different from what people normally do, where the vines would usually just start at the ground and then end up climbing trellises or fences to climb up a wall or something. So then it would just fall and make it seem like the entire upper structure would be floating or something, which I kind of wanted to be able to visualize in the space. And then yeah, this is also the main drying area where I mentioned the ramp earlier. I I don't think this is an actually very accurate illustration yet, mainly because I haven't been able to create and calculate the ramp, because yeah, there should be like a 1:12 or something ratio, so then I have to figure that out as well. But then this is generally how I want it to be like. And so yeah, there's also the vines hanging from the top, and intent, like I kind of want to plan also for this area where, as you can see my cursor that I'm pointing to, I wanted to be planted here as well. And I showed these bushes because, as I mentioned before, I kind of wanted to be able to like plant a companion plant, which is basil, mainly because of the properties of being able to repel flies. So like other structures that have like fly curtains, like how when you go into a store or something, there's actually like a really strong blast of wind, and those are the fly curtains that keep out all the mosquitoes and everything. I kind of wanted to create that, but then instead of having that wind that's physically pushing out flies, I would create that smell, like strong smell, that would create a barrier from flies to enter the enclosed portion, which is the library. Yeah. And then also I kind of was able to think about and research on the pools that I wanted to do. So then this is actually more modified, I guess, from before, where I would just have bowls placed on specific areas on top of the roof instead of all of them like clumped up together, covering the entire roof. And also I was thinking about the way it would drain, because since I kind of wanted the water to be able to collect and also not remain still in that what I call bird pool or something, um I wanted to kind of create a drain that was camouflaged and at the same time had enough um pores or like holes to drain water, but in a specific like speed. So then it would still like be able to create puddles that would not drain the water too fast, but then also kind of create that movement in the water so that it won't remain still and have flies kind of fester and like plant seeds into, I mean seeds, eggs into it. So then having that constant motion in the water would help prevent this. So yeah, and this is actually my last slide. I don't know, I was just kind of thinking about how I could pick the flowers from the the upper area, because you can't really pick flowers from like from the vines from like the ground or something because it's too high. So then I was just thinking about having like those translucent windows, because I remember mentioning before that I really wanted to promote like this sense of exclusion from the outside area and kind of create that puppet imagery. I mean, yeah, shadow imagery or something. So then I wanted to have, yeah, that translucent um, window, and then kind of you could slide it open or something to collect those flowers and then create your machuca tiles, which is in the balcony, right, like nearby, like that. Yeah. So that's it actually.
Don't close the windows. Can you hear me? Because I'm
Yeah.
far.
Okay.
Okay. So my
Yeah.
comment. Sige, let's go. Can we move forward? Yeah, I like these diagrams. It's just that
Okay.
I feel like flower pick. Oh, sorry. Can we go back to flower picking?
Oh, this one.
Yeah, tea making.
Um,
Where does this happen in? Can we go to the next one? The
Okay.
FPTD here in this diagram.
Because actually in these exterior portions, these are the flower where the flowers are going to be growing.
Okay.
And so yeah, as in this diagram, it's in the outer portions, and those drying spaces are here and here, which is going closer to the center, and also the main washing room is, well, mainly in the middle, these two portions, and the storage unit. So yeah, I kind of wanted to create that flow within the space.
Okay, so it's a well thought of flow adjacency. So
Yeah.
maybe can we move forward to the next slide? Yeah, because maybe in the next week you can sort of show how is this is happening in this diagram so that we can better imagine the relationship of the spaces and how does water
Okay.
leaking relate with another space. Because right now it looks like a modernist, brutalist building in the 80s or 90s. It's beautiful, but we don't see the exuberance of the ideas that he created. I don't even see where the location of the water basin, which I think will be very interesting to showcase as a
Yeah.
building envelope. And then can we go to the next slide? Yeah, it doesn't show it. It looks like a building done by Luxin or Lorgalma, etc. So it doesn't have that your ideas that will make this
Yeah.
difference. Say, can you go to the can you move forward? Okay, forward. Okay. This is particularly interesting. You need to think of how you can drain this better. Uh, yes, to avoid stagnant water, somehow the water has to move or be replenished somehow. And
Yeah.
like I said earlier, I don't want you guys to depend on technology uh, in doing so. Try to imagine if this is drain is I don't know if the interiors are going to be air conditioned, but if it's not, they'll probably explore the idea that it drains to the next level. Then you have another puddle on the next level, and that becomes a drain itself. So in a way, you have that dripping thing happening, like a spectacle, or you can imagine what I'm talking about, like it's like a drip. It's like being in a cave when the ceiling is wet. So you have that very sensorial experience. That's one option. The other one is probably similar to what Tracy prepared. Like you have a piping connected to the drain, and it reminds you of the columns of the Johnson's building by Frank Lloyd Wright. I don't. You can look look for it. It's an office for Johnson,
Okay.
and so they have in your case you have a water collection that goes down as pillars. So that's like the pipe for the water. But I'm more excited personally. You don't have to follow it, but I find it more interesting if it doesn't conflict with the program at the next level. If it's a water dripping, and then you have another puddle or another bowl at the next level to collect it with the actual drain. So that's what we call the architectural spectacle. So yeah, I would like to see those innovations that you provided right now. You have the puddle for the birds, and then you have the flower picking, and then and maybe the flower area where you can where we can find it. Maybe highlight it also so that we can have an overview of how this entire buildings looks like.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say or ask?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, sige. Thank you, Bea.
Yeah.
Your
Thank you.
diagram. Okay.
Size. So in a way, it creates a more random pattern because like if every thread was like uniform, the length, it will make a more parang mas subtle yung movement niya. So I made it in a different length. So if you, it's like 7 seconds lang. But I'm trying to visualize how it will look like.
Tensile to, no? So may tension yung mga wires na yan.
Yeah. So
So,
it's parang a thread like kinetic facade na in a way.
so if there's a bird that goes,
Yeah,
that,
like if there's like one bird, let's say that goes through here. Since these are, I haven't thought of the material yet, but I'm gonna find a light material. So let's say if
reactive
one
siya.
bird, ano pa?
So reactive siya.
Yeah. So if like one bird, because like if everything was in uniform and one bird would, let's say, sit on it, mas subtle yung movement niya compared if there are different threads. So parang the force, the tension to other, let's say the other adjacent models, if it was more tawag dyan, if it was more different, the lengths, it would make a more sudden movement compared when they're all uniform.
Okay, cool naman siya. So, what else? Okay siya.
So this was just basically parang pinapa-visualize ko lang. Pero I have my sheets pala. Wait lang, sir.
Okay, sige lang.
Kita na, sir?
Kita na.
So I had to rethink my first step for my form. So like, I had to rethink every like what programs I want per my floor. Because last week I had this yung cafe and yung bar. So I took that out na since I couldn't parang di rin siya, di rin siya realistic in a way. So I picked more on I was more leaning towards the library and museum since they're more quiet in a sense. So these are my programs per floor. And since I'm trying to do a sound, I thought like why not like create what if like sound was to transfer from one room to another room, why not use like the corridors between rooms, because like the corridors are what connects each room to another. So if I can use that as like my sound medium to create to better like flow the sound per each floor. So I had this is my initial corridor, or yeah, basically the corridors per floor. So this is the ground floor. Tapos yung umakyat, yun na po yung mga ramps. And it connects to the third and the fourth floor. So I made an initial map first to see how it will work out. So once I had my
The
corridors
ramps
mapped
are
out,
connected?
ano po, sir?
Are the ramps connected from one another?
Yeah. Wait lang. I'll zoom in so it's better. So like you can see this ramp going up. It's gonna connect here to the second floor. This is straight, but this one's going up, so it's gonna go up there. That's para may corridor. That's ganun din sa ibang floors. It's basically my ramp. And there are also like ramps sa loob mismo, because these are only the exterior ones. The interior ones are this one.
Okay.
So after I mapped out my corridors, next I tried to place my programs so to where they'd fit best. So for this one, since this is yung facade ko is in this corner, I have buildings in here on the north. Yung south ko at this is a corner lot. So this is where I focused on where most of my external factors like the light and wind would pass through. So I had my museum here, library, tas yung bird habitat ko, like the interior garden, is in the center. And basically the spaces between those box-like forms, yun na yung mga corridor kung saan sila pumapasok. And then after that, I created like how my sound would flow from floor to floor. So basically, since yung kanina, the one I showed, yung model, that was the kinetic model, that was like the source of the white noise na eh. That's why I placed it in these two corners, because since that's the corner lot, that's where the wind and the sun, because the sun is also travels from here going here. So I use this as my wind facade na for the white noise. And then for the pink noise, that's where my source comes in. So these green dots there, that's the source of the noise. Since that's the interior garden, so that's where all the birds come in, the trees rustling, um, ano pa ba? Basically yung crickets din, yung basically the life cycle na. And after that, in the fourth and the third floor, that's where my pink noise area um is situated. So as you can see from the source, it branches out to the area. And then after that, as it goes through the second floor, since this area is more open, the interior garden, the second floor is more closed off. So in a way, since it's not exposed anymore to the garden, that's how I put my brown noise now. Since it's more enclosed, so there in a way it has like this deeper feeling. So that's where my brown noise starts to come in now. So for my idea is, I started off with the ramps, like how one ramp connects and the ramp from the first floor connects to the second floor. So between all floors, I have this ramp like feature. So basically, if you're on the first floor, you go up here to the second floor, and then you go inside to the corridors na. And then from there on, I made a more detailed, like a detailed architectural concept of how the ramps would look like. So basically, this imagine if this was the external facade. So what would happen if this was the ramp, and then there would be how my kinetic models will be attached. So this would be the first facade na. So in yung interior facade, that's where the models come in since they're the first layer. So they're more, sila yung unang tinatamaan ng hangin. Tsaka since it's the facade nga, the most, it's what the birds or even people are first, it's what they first see. So, and then after that, there comes the ramp, which is also a hallway. And then there's another facade, the secondary facade, which is where the plants come in. Uh, So here is my how I made my model. I'll explain each step later, like how I thought of it. So first is I started with a box, and I filleted this corner since I wanted a more smoother, like if you were in the ramp mismo. I wanted if you're like gonna turn, go straight and then turn right to the ramp. I wanted it to be more smooth, and at the same time, since it's a curved edge, it's more like when wind hits it and it starts to separate at the corner, it's more smooth compared if it's a corner. Because if it's a corner and the wind hits it, and then it splits, the wind becomes faster. So I didn't want like that surprising effect. So that's why I made it a fillet. So basically, this is my end product. I'm kind of how to say I'm not really so much into the form like how it looks like, but I tried basing it all on the factors that I tried to reduce it with. Pero since this is not final, I was okay with it naman at first. Because I'd be, parang ayusin ko pa later on. So for my form, why I actually cutted this off, like parang, it's for, I tried to, saan na ba yan? Parang tinulak ko tong part because for the external facade, for the white noise. So I pushed it all back, and then I inserted like the three layers, which is between the first, the second, the third, and the fourth. And then I also made like an opening here. So it's like I pushed it and then I removed it because I wanted, since this corner, this facade is directly accessible to the sunlight and to the wind. So I made like a hole here. So like when birds fly or when the sun, let's say it's around solar noon, it's easier. It enters more easily into the interior garden. So that's why I pushed it here. And at the same time, it's like a viewing deck. And the reason why I had a lot of curves and fillets, especially in the interior and a bit on the exterior, is because I wanted wind to propagate more smoothly. Because like if everything was a corner and the wind would hit it, it's more like the impact of that wind would be more sudden. But compared to a smooth surface, it would like tawag dyan, like it's gonna roll more smoothly because like there's no corner. And then the reason why I tapered it yung sa taas downwards is I wanted it, since I'm gonna have an interior garden, I wanted it very much exposed to the sun. At the same time, yung rain, it's very easily accessible to the interior garden. And then here comes like how yung my last slide kasi was more on the how my external factors would affect my form. This one is more on the unique factors now, which is yung noise. So the most simply that I explained a while ago was like the white noise. How I use the corner facade, the corner, and then I pushed it back to create that ramp. And then for the pink noise and the white noise, it gets a bit more complicated because like I wanted like these tunnels, these tubes within that internal facade. But actually, yung tube, what I wanted really was like if it was incorporated to the wall. It's not like hindi siya parang separate element. Like if you like mga kaizaha, it's like the everything is organic, but there are hidden hallways there. So in a way, I wanted this tube incorporated to that interior wall. So when the wind goes in, and since the tubes and everything in it is more curvy in a sense, the wind propagates more smoothly. So in a way, you get that pink noise rustling effect in a smoother way, especially when there are strong winds. Hindi siya sobrang sudden like compared to a corner. So since I have like a more smoother wind here, it not only benefits like the vines, my plants in the interior gardens, but also how birds fly. Since if there's a smoother wind, they fly more they fly more parang more safer in a way. So in a way, that also attracts my area to those sunbirds that I need. And since yung interior garden ko is more focused on the pink noise, I have these tubes. These tubes are the only thing that's open or accessible to every room. Since pardon, I didn't want all my areas like the museums to be totally open to that pink noise, but I wanted it like if you were in that pink noise area and you wanted another type of peace and quiet, you'd go to the adjacent rooms, which is the library and the museum. So in a way, the sound, that pink noise sound, and the adjacent programs are in a way related. And then after that, that's where my brown noise comes in. Since my pink noise tubes, since they're more open, they get that higher frequency. So sound is able to uh, bounce faster. But when it comes to the brown noise, it's like the tube is from the third floor. It goes underground to the second floor. And that second floor is where my yung spa and massage na. It's where the deep quiet place is na. And it's not exposed to my interior gardens anymore. So from there, I incorporate that pink noise. And since my tube isn't that open compared to my brown noise tube isn't that open compared to the pink noise tube, it creates like that deeper sound from the third floor going to the second floor. So what I really wanted was imagine if this interior garden, the one in the fillet, if it was more random in shape, like the shape is more organic, since the tubes are incorporated to the wall na. So in a way, it promotes wind circulation and it also acts like walkways and hallways for people to pass through. Yun lang po, sir.
Okay. Sige, don't close the window so that we have a better uh, understanding of what we're talking about because it's more visible. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because I'm distracted by the noise.
Ay, sorry, sir. Ingay kasi sa
Pero
bahay.
my only concern is if you can hear me naman.
Yeah. I can hear you, sir.
Okay, that's good. So I have a concern regarding the program. Because I saw that there's a museum part. What is that museum all about?
It's like an exhibition room na, sir.
Okay,
Uh,
be careful.
parang yung 14th floor natin, ganun. It's like sometimes the exhibits make it like a museum in a sense.
It's not a museum; it's a gallery. Okay, so
Oh, yeah, gallery pala, sorry.
a museum is a
Something.
more complex program. A gallery is just a space for displaying stuff. And the reason
Okay.
why I'm asking about it because it seems that uh, I would encourage you to focus on a program because this is one of the tendency of just combining all programs. It is just you think is applicable because you're dealing with noise. So,
Yes.
but if you focus on one type of program, whether it's a spa, a church, or whatever, you can study it and you can have a better understanding on how it works. Right now, it's a conglomeration of those.
Yeah. That's
Space.
what I plan on studying next din, like
Oh, you
my
decide to.
special programs that relate to the noise talaga.
Oh, yeah, library. I think
Yeah, the
library
library,
cafe can be because cafe is noisy, then probably it's you can kasi the way I'm looking at your building is that as you go up, it becomes more quiet.
Yeah, nga, sir.
So in a
Pero
way,
the problem kasi with the cafe, like you said last week, is yun nga, even though if there was if even though if like you wanted to control the quiet in the sense, a cafe in a building wouldn't really be able to control how much people it attracts.
yeah, you put it on the
As
ground floor.
yeah.
And the ground floor is really commercial naman, di ba?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
pwede rin, sir.
as you go up, because a lot of the libraries now have cafes, and at the same time, when I'm looking at your proposal, you have a gradient of noise levels. So,
Yes, sir.
what is the best place for a super quiet area at the topmost floor? Is it a study center? Is it a library, or whatever? So, I think you need to focus on that, and that will, and then, and the second comment is, I love the idea that you are managing creating innovation on noise. The plant part is becoming less highlighted.
Okay, yeah. Okay, gets.
So you need to work on that. And other than that, I think it can be a solid proposal if you are able to solve all those three ideas with the plant in mind and how the plant can minimize noise. I don't know. Maybe look for plants that are uh that's about noise or whatever that can shield noise, whatever. Or probably, it's not just one plant. Uh Different sizes of plants. You have the gabi leaf, how it can work. Then probably the one that you have at that uppermost level because it covers and so you know what I mean. Like different levels, you have
Yeah.
different kinds of plants because
Yes, sir. Like a gradient of plants then, like for my noise na rin. So
yeah,
parang one noise is equivalent to one type of plant.
yeah, because
Para
of the
something like that.
coverage of the leaf. You know what I mean. So that way, your approach is very different from the rest. But that would require you to study. Yeah, if it's going to be a big leaf plant, study what the kind of soil, and then design a place for it. So in a way, somehow it's becoming a little composed or a little concocted. Okay,
Okay. So bale, sir, what I need to focus more on is like more
program
on the specific programs lang, like the library, the cafe,
and
the
how the
spa.
plant and how the plants respond. Maybe the
Okay.
spa you can take it out. Everyone is doing a spa.
Oh
Cafe,
yeah, actually, mga
library,
thermal baths din, yeah.
cafe,
Oh.
library, study area, pwede.
Yung gallery ba, sir? Is there a potential
Ah,
for you? Yung for the gallery, do you think there's a potential for
pwede
that?
pa yung gallery. Pwede pa yung gallery. Pero baka cafe, gallery. Kasi yung gallery can be noisy sometimes. Eh.
Uh, yeah.
Para
Okay.
yun ang gradient mo. I
Okay.
don't know if you are familiar with study centers run by different scholars. In UST, there's an Opus Dei run study center. I forgot the
Yeah.
name. You can have the same kind of thing or happen here, except that you have a cafe. But the actual study center, they even have a mini dorm for sleeping. I forgot the name, but you can look at study centers. I think that's how I imagine this building.
What I imagine kasi sir is like what if I'm creating my own like the generator dun sa SDA like three floors tas iba-iba rin yung program nila in a sense. But it's all for like leisure din, you know.
I think you're setting yourself into a more complicated problems. Uh,
Ayun, sige.
I
One
mean,
by one ko lang by program, sir.
it's a cohesive. Eh. And this is my role, like to help you curate it. Something that will make more sense as a building typology.
Okay, sir. Pero so far gets ko naman like yung issues and how I can work on it.
Okay, and then and keep in mind of so you started with those bird stuff. The moment you study the other plants and how they affect the acoustics, then think of the tectonics also, the connection, construction, etc.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Sige. Pero proceed on it to that level already.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
sir. Thank you.
Sorry, sir. Ayan, sir. Last Sir, pwede po ba mag-start?
Oh, pwede na.
Okay po. So, yung last consultation po, ito po yung pinakita ko and then
Oo.
pati po yung santan ring ko.
Yes.
But, kasi po medyo nahirapan din po ako this week kasi hindi ko po alam mag-start. So, ayan po yung meron ako ngayon. So, ito po yung parang ginawa ko po. Binago ko po yung placement ng viewing deck. Parang inangle ko na po siya kung saan. Since na-realize ko rin po, nakakahinder siya sa araw. And then, na-realize ko rin po sa sinabi yung last consultation na what if yung parang santan plant ko rito, yung dito ko po, parang towards sa araw, ganun. So parang tinaasan, yung nangyari po, nag-focus ako ngayon sa paano pataasan yung santan ring ko, which is yung core nung structure ko. And then nag-experiment lang po ako konti muna sa magiging facade po ng structure ko and explain ko na lang po later. So ito po yung parang program ko ngayon na bago. So unlike po nung last week, naka-ISO lang siya sa isang lugar. But this time, binago ko po siya kung saan parang mas efficient yung hangin and then yung araw sa pagtama sa plants ko. Kasi yun po yung isa sa requirements ng plants ko. And then nagdagdag po ako ng mga parang parts wherein ito po yung una. So yung number 1, unang makikita, share ko po mamaya yung parang visualization ko po ng ano to part na to pero later. Dito po banda, hindi ko po nalagay but this is the road part. So kasi corner lot po yung site ko. So accessible siya sa lahat ng areas. And then yung tapat ko is factory and then the rest are residential and industrial. So may mga halo-halo po. But wala kaming commercial area. So ito po yung number 1 ko is what I call honesty store. Since wala naman po kaming commercial space o kaya parang tindahan sa area na yun according sa macro site analysis ko, I decided to place that one. And also parang it's an area wherein it could have relaxation, interaction, and then gain profit din in a way. Pero with the twist different from the typical na may magbabantay, but this area would be like testing your honesty. And yan po. So next yung area ko na sa tingin ko maganda isunod and inviting in a way kasi yun isa yun sa goals ko, parang to invite them to come inside and see the santan ring planter na ginawa ko, and then like inganyohin silang magtanim and stuff like that, since it's an easy po naman kasi i-propagate to. So I have this part wherein it's an arc, this one, pero hindi pa siya arc. It's an arc but dito po yung place kung saan parang sasabit yung mga herbs to dry. Kasi my idea is for my structure is like gusto ko po yung structure ko mismo yung magiging parang machine, pero hindi siya machine na magpapatuyo ng mga herbs ko. Since may plant kahit ano pong part kahit anong part, but last week pinreset ko lang yung flower part. But other than the flower part, the leaves, the stem, and the roots, they could be all dried and then turned into a tea or a concoction or other stuff pa. But I don't want to parang overwhelm yung mga taong gagamit. So, yun muna, nag-focus lang muna ako sa flowers. But this part would be for drying the stem and the roots. And yun po. So, mga extra. So, this part pala po, I forgot to mention that I have three floors, but ayoko po kasi na 4-story-ish agad kasi parang magiging awkward siya sa site ko. Other than, ang gusto ko lang yung, kasi it's residential and wala kaming, mostly mga 1 floor, 2 floors lang yung meron. And then mga shanty pa. So, feeling ko pag naglagay po ako ng something na parang foreign, baka hindi sila mapumasok if ever. Yung mga stakeholders ko kasi from last consultation, I want to focus dun sa mga middle class people to lower class since yun yung nasa area ko. Na site area ko rather. So for the number 3, ito po yung santan ring planter na inayos ko pa, which is I will show later on my specific diagram. And then I plan to put a parang ramp so that it could be accessible to all of the potential visitors, kasi I also realized based from last macro site, I'm also near pala sa area wherein there's a parang area community na bahay para sa mga naka-will PWD na tao. So I also want them to encourage to go to my structure in a way. So basically parang my goal here is to create a recreational space with profit and commercial, gano'n. Ah, so for my viewing area, just like nung last consultation ko po, ganun pa rin naman siya. But this time naka-accommodate lang para yung if ever na I want to taasan pa tong santan ring ko, which will I explain later. Hindi siya makakasagabal, and actually parang magiging part pa siya nung iniisip ko na na structure ko. So for this part sa gilid, yung dito sa ilalim, this is the place wherein it's secluded from above kasi these two are yung accessible sa road area. But yung sa baba, this is the place wherein number 5, I have this transition area wherein I borrowed the concept from tea houses in Japan, wherein bago silang mag-perform ng sado or tea ceremony, they have to parang let parang kailangan nila ng space para mag-transition papasok, hindi yung diretso, unlike sa mga typical na typology ng mga household or commercial spaces natin dito sa Philippines na diretso, ayan na yung store or yan na yung exact space. Since my goal also is to create a relaxation area for the people, kasi nga I noticed na lahat ng nasa paligid ng site ko is more on working and so very busy. So gusto ko mag-introduce ng ganong activity pa rin. So number 6, I also have the Ayurveda, or it is commonly practiced sa Asia and in India as well. So this is a herbal medicine practice. Since my plant is not santan is not an ornamental plant lang, it's also a herbal medicinal plant. So yun. That's interesting kasi in India they use this plant a lot, pero dito sa atin, although it's rampant dito sa area namin, hindi ko sila nakikitang ginagamit as this kind of product, other than na pinaglalaroan lang siya ng mga bata kasi sinisip-sip nila yung water sa dulo, yung flower. So yun. For the last part, this number 7 here, this is the tea area, or what I call NNT room. Typically kasi, the typical tea area is like parang isang space lang wherein you could just appreciate the outside or the landscaping sa labas. That's the traditional way, but there's this guy called NN. I mean, oo siya. Tapos parang yung ginawa niya naman is like he played with skylights and yung para bang how light penetrates the room, and then highlighting and even more enhancing the space. So since my plant needs a lot of sunlight and hindi siya choosy, so I also think na why not adapt it as well sa aking tea room to make it mine or localized in a sense na ma-appreciate pa rin siya ng mga tao sa area ko, even though I borrowed the concept from a different country, ganon. Kasi I noticed also that walang masyadong tea room, more on milk tea stuff area lang. So, yan. This weird thing yung nandito po, this is actually a material na, oh, pinag-aaralan ko. So, here, mamaya na pala. So, this is yung parang in-enhanced version ko siya. In a sense, nilagyan ko na siya ng soil. Kung napapansin niyo po, ayan. And then yung na-notice, yung parang mga comments niyo po, sir, last consultation. Yung typically kasi itong size hindi ko po nalagay, but mga less than 1 meter po yung depth ng soil planter ko. And then I chose the circular based from last week. Four lang po talaga per tire yung gusto kong present per tire to control, and then also para hindi siya massive. And then I chose this kind of sa tingin ko magiging first to kasi although my plant is a can be potted at hindi siya yung parang normally okay lang kahit hindi kailangan ng flat na soil. Pero sa tingin ko this could be nice way to introduce how to plant my santan. Kasi po, I want to control how many and kung gaano karami yung makukuha per harvest para sa aking tea. So, I also research a type of para strategy on how to create more flowers kasi yun yung pinaka-focus ko right now, the flowers, to propagate a lot of flowers by the technique of binding, kung saan you have to propagate to pinch every part of the stem, and then mas in a way mas lalong dadami yung clusters ko. So yung computation ko po last week, pwede pa siyang umangat hypothetically. Okay. So ito po yung parang mas detailed in a way nung per tire ko. So yung idea ko kasi dito is to be stackable, and then it actually ay parang kinopya ko, or although hindi naman kinopya, I was inspired by the shape of chasen, yung pinanghalo ng matcha sa tea ceremony. So this is what it looks like po right now. So the important element lang naman here is the soil. So my soil for santan is needs to be acidic, loam, humid, moistly, and highly drained. So okay, I also decided to further put these slats para yung hangin, mahahanginan yung halaman ko, and then yun. So for yung kanina po, yung sa facade, I have this idea na from last week, based for my shared to you yung sketch. I got inspired by Kengo Kuma Associates, the tea house sa Beijing, wherein they use plastic, and then specifically polyethylene, and then polycarbonate. So for me, I think I want to explore on these materials for my facade, since I noticed yung sa paligid ko, paligid ng site ko is more concrete, and then parang mga metal and other stuff. And I want to introduce something na parang would help dry my plant, my byproduct sa plant kong santan. So I think na by using translucent materials such as plastic, but these plastics are actually recyclable. So I'm okay using them, and I think mas madali siya to build wise, since I plan to create na parang naka-mold siya, since I research about this technique wherein tutunawin mo yung polyethylene, and then you create a mold. Okay, hindi ko pa siya actually na-drawing yung parang idea ko for the mold, but yeah. And then you use this technique called rotational molding. And then I want also to incorporate this translucent polycarbonate panel, so that parang since my site also could paano ko sabihin? Parang natatamaan din siya ng harsh light from the sunlight. I want to control also the light by adjusting my materials for my facade. So ito po yung parang nag-drawing ulit ako ng bagong bubble diagram. It's just a sketch. But ito po yung parang mas malinaw na process ko na compared sa last week. So of course my main core for my whole activity would be the plants, and then everything follows. Oh, sorry. So I have this idea. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa polyethylene and polycarbonate. So although hindi pa siya actually nabubuo sa isip ko, but ito nga yun. Kasi yung idea ko is to help yung dapat yung facade ko would greatly help yung sa pagpapadali ng drying process ng mga flowers ko. And usually, it takes 2 days to dry the flower pero hindi pa siya ganun ka-dry na dry. And then, drying process lang yun. But you have to set it pa kasi baka may bugs and other stuff like that. So, my main concern now is to solve the speed o kaya papadaliin ko yung process on how to, you know, but yun. So, ito yung nasa utak ko right now. Ito po yung drying rack na pinakita ko sa inyo before. And then, this one, yung size lang naman niya is I base it from silver ratio, but yun na. And then the yellow represents the sunlight as I thought of it. And then how it diffuses pag tinamaan niyo tong part na to, which is the polycarbonate, translucent polycarbonate. And then this one, the blue one, ito po yung parang hangin. Since sunlight and yung hangin is very crucial sa aking drying process. So, ito po yung mga sketch ko pa. So, ito po yung sinasabi ko kanina sa honesty store ko. This one, yung mga bilog-bilog po dyan, these are the drying racks na naisip ko rin. Kasi organically, hindi naman kailangan ng parang machine sa pagda-dry nung flowers ko since it's hindi siya ganun pa pina-practice and I'm still thinking of experimenting with it pa naman. So, ayan po. So, unlike the typical na parang rack lang siya, why not make it circular to make it more interesting? And then, this also serves as a place for people to just come in kasi mako-curious sila and then eventually finding themselves going around hopefully sa building ko. And then yung mga walls na nandito, ito po yung parang idea ko on how would I use the two materials that I told earlier, yung and then how the light interacts with the whole space to help not just aesthetically pleasing in a way for me, but to also like help drying the whole tea process. So yun lang po.
Okay. So I appreciate the illustrations. I think it gives a better picture of what you want to do. But let me just I always use the word compart. Well, it's my own term. I don't know if it's a commonly used term, but compartmentalization of ideas. Can we go to the isometric of your building, your proposed building, so that I can make a point there? So I appreciate all of these materials, Leah. I love the commitment that you are putting into this work. But this is where my criticism is, no? So when I say compartmental, is that you have one idea and then you isolate that idea and then you put one
Opo.
idea beside it, and then that idea is isolated. It's like alien, you know what I mean? And then
Opo, opo.
so you have the polycarbonate idea, the Santan ring, and then you have the tea room below.
Opo, opo, opo.
Then you have the
Parang yung last week, sir.
yeah, and then you have the view
Okay.
deck. I know that there's
Opo.
there there are there's a direction that sort of talks about how different things are, but even if they look appear different and multifaceted, it kind of works all together as a system. But right now, it just looks all isolated. Um,
Opo.
Like even the viewing deck, when you look at the railing, it's very conventional. It wasn't
Opo.
really derived from the DNA of any of your ideas. Um,
Opo.
you can work with the. I mean, this is a good exercise for you, and it's good that
Opo.
I think it's the same explanation that I have with Tracy, that she had to go through this first. And then now that you are looking at all of these ideas working as a standalone and then you mesh them together, now it's time for you to
Opo.
edit so that it will look cohesive. So
Opo.
how to
Opo.
create a very consistent language even though you're using different materials. Uh,
Opo.
Another point is that another lacking aspect in this process is the connection of the different systems and processes. You were talking about the Santanti, right?
Opo.
And,
Opo.
uh,
Oh,
and then how do
opo.
you process? Like you need to provide a space, a configuration, a physical space, like how you
Opo.
harvest first, and then you put like you need to. There's a
Oh,
physicality
yes.
in the
Sir.
storage. Do you get it?
Nalimutan ko po pala sabihin yun. Yun po pala yung sa ayo. Dito po sa number 6. Dito po yun lahat.
Okay. Like if you
Opo.
harvest it, do you just drop it like like
Opo.
confetti on the next floor? Do you get it? So it becomes an
Opo, opo.
architectural event. You know what I mean? So these processes have to be connected. Don't just mesh them together. Can we go to
Okay po.
one? Like kasi kunyari, you already use a language. It's all slatted wood, no? So
Opo.
probably that is also the design of the railing. Kasi
Opo, opo.
the railing of your stairs is different again with the suntan, and then it's different
Okay po,
with the,
sir.
with the viewing deck. When you have this information together already, it's like you went to a junk shop and then you found different materials and then you put them together.
Opo,
That-
sir.
I don't know if that's what you did,
Sir
no?
kasi, sir kasi parang sa isip ko po ano eh, hindi pa naman po final, baka may pabago pa po kayo. Kaya kung ano lang po muna yung meron ako, yun po muna. Pero
I'm
aayusin ko pa
teaching you.
naman po.
Yeah, I know, but I'm teaching you how to
Opo.
become a designer. So yeah, I need you to
Opo.
be conscious of that. Like I said, it's okay to have a multifaceted, multi-texture design, for as long as
Opo.
it's still working as cohesive process or system. But in this case, even the process and the program are disconnected. The Santanti is different from the planting area, etc. You get it? So I
Opo.
need to see the
Opo.
connection between the two. Like, do you drop the leaves, and then how do you get rid of the dried leaves? You need to answer those things, and those answers will generate a physicality or a form. Okay.
Opo.
So and then when it comes to your concern about being isolated from your site contextually and your stakeholders, there are ways to do it. I mean, you're already working with plants, and the plants in general are very neutral. It doesn't really intimidate people. And then even if you have a big massing, I mean, you can open the ground level to make it more appear democratic, meaning it's open to the
Okay
side.
po.
So it feel like it's more welcoming. So
Opo.
actually, the technique in retail is that you put transparency or glass so that you invite people you allow people to see what's going on inside. That is
Opo.
making the building more inviting. So ano pa ba? Say, can we move forward so that I can make sure that I'm not missing anything? Okay, yeah. My concern here is that you have a slatted wood. How will the stems go to the soil if the soil is under the slats?
Ano po ulit? Sorry
Kasi
po.
you have a wooden slats, di ba?
Sir. Sir, ayun sir, may naglagay po ako ng parang specific space para sa stem ko,
So
sir.
that's
Kakulay niya lang po talaga yung wood.
a hole.
Opo.
Okay.
Pero mga 1 meter
Okay.
po.
This
Since
is where your building
magkakalayo
tech
naman.
will come into play.
Opo.
You know that it's very hard to create a wood that is round, no?
Circular. Opo.
You need to heat it. But you need to show it as a defined form, and then all the straight um, wooden slats will stop there. So most likely,
Opo.
either you stick with that bended wood, or if it's a rectangular, you need to show it. No? So you need to show how the assembly will work, how the construction will work. All right.
Okay po.
So it's all about the cohesion. But I think the mashing of the ideas and then curating it, the tea, the santan, I think it's good. The honesty store is good. They all mesh well together. Okay, it's
Thank
just
you.
about a matter
Opo.
of combining all of these ideas together and how it is a cohesive process. Okay,
Okay po. Opo.
do you have a question?
Wala pa naman po.
Okay, sige. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you po.
All right.
So, yung last time kasi na nag-present ako, sir, Arabica coffee pa yung plant ko, and somewhere along that time na nag-decide ako na Robusta coffee na lang kasi mas pasok siya sa site kasi Arabica is planted on higher altitude areas kaya medyo hindi siya dun sa site ko. And Robusta actually may ibang farms dito sa Cavite na nagtatanim ng Robusta coffee. So, comparing the two, mas matagal mag-grow yung Robusta pero mas madami siyang yield. And yung taste niya actually, parang sinasabi nila less quality daw yung Robusta pero more caffeine siya compared to Arabica. So, ay nireport yung dati kong mentions kasi mas malaki yung Robusta coffee compared sa Arabica. So, ayan. Ito yung naging basis ko for the partition later. Then, ayan. Yung part ko for the coffee farm, the plant idea, basically, there's parts of it, farming, yung producing ng coffee. So, there's the farming and harvesting and then the roasting. So, basically, after you harvest, dyan siya sa processing. So, meron fermenting, drying, molding. Then, after nun, kakalabasan niya is yung tinatawag na green coffee. Then, yung coffee na yun, niro-roast, turn in brown tea. So, and then, dito ini ko lang yung difference of brewing. So, yung step process at iba-ibang coffee pwedeng magawa out of the dun sa brewing. And initially, actually, yung goal is to program parang instead of having a cafe where dun binubrew coffee, dun iniinom, parang if mas complete yung coffee experience. So, nandun na rin yung roasting, nandun na rin yung farming. So, which makes sense kasi nung ako about the coffee, actually, hindi siya comparing sa Arabic, which yung sa cherries ng Arabica, pag ripe na siya, nahuhulog na siya mag-isa. Yung Robusta coffee, kailangan siyang i-harvest manually. So there's two kinds of harvesting. One is strip picking, which yung parang buong branch yung kinukuha, which is naghahalo-halo yung quality. So merong ripe, merong hindi pa masyado. Nag-iiba daw yung quality ng coffee. So ang ginagawa usually is selective harvesting, which is talagang pipiliin mo yung red cherries lang. Pero more labor intensive daw siya. Or more labor intensive and mas matagal yung process. So nabasa ko actually yung ibang farms na tinutukoy ko sa Cavite. Ang ginagawa nila is parang sa strawberry farm sa Baguio. Parang yung bibili ng yung bibili dun sa farm, sila din yung mag-harvest. So parang inisip ko, okay siya kasi part siya ng experience na hindi yung nagbo-brew, hindi yung umiinom. Parang i-harvest yung coffee. So, sa isang building siya. Pero, upon thinking about it, parang na-realize ko hindi siya ganang innovative kasi yun na yung pinaka-coffee experience. Parang hindi ako naghalo ng ibang activities. So, and actually ginagawa na rin pala siya sa ibang branches ng Starbucks, yung Starbucks Reserve. So, ayun. Then, this week actually, may nakasama akong friend ko na ano siya, magaling siya sa coffee. Actually, kahit anong, when it comes to coffee, madami siyang alam. And nasabi niya sa akin na coffee actually ginagamit niya as pre-workout na drink. So, nagulat ako dun kasi parang hindi ba delikado yun na parang nagpa-palpitate ka then nag-workout ka? Sabi niya hindi daw kasi yung coffee pala, yung sobrang good alternative siya to energy drinks. Yung main ingredient naman sa coffee drink is so yun. So naisip ko parang kung good workout drink ang coffee, bakit wala masyadong gyms na parang may kasamang cafe or something, di ba? So, yun, parang yun yung reason behind it. Kaya nag-decide ako na gawing program ng building ko is parang hybrid of cafe and a fitness center. So, ayun. Ito yung different effects ng caffeine when it comes to exercise. So, increase in metabolism, less tolerance to fatigue, and the calorie parang mas nagbo-boost daw. Pero the thing to note lang is wala exact recommendation kung ilang caffeine content yung best for workout. Kasi daw siya, individual basis siya. So may iba-iba kasi tayong tolerance when it comes to coffee. So iba-iba dapat yung caffeine consumption natin. So parang naisip ko, kung iba-iba tayo ng caffeine tolerance, parang it will be best na meron tayong sariling parang recipe or we should brew the amount of coffee na best for ourselves. So imbis na cafe na parang mamili ka ng drink, then kung ano ibigay sa'yo, yun na yun. Parang you should be able to have the freedom to control the amount of caffeine that you take, lalo na when it comes to workout or exercising. So, wala ko nahanap na parang specific workouts or exercise na best combined with caffeine or coffee. Pero nabasa ko lang na hindi siya suitable for exercise that are supposed to help you relax, like yoga. So, yun lang yung exercise na hindi dapat sinasama with caffeine. So, So that's the story behind my idea sa program. Now, when it comes to stakeholders, so may kinds of stakeholders sa program, producers or general yung farmers, then yung employee, which is of the barista, the security, the manager, and the customer, which are yung regular customers na yung pupunta for coffee, then yung those na pupunta for coffee and exercise since fitness center siya. So, yun, nilagay ko dito yung spaces kung saan sila, yung spaces na ginagamit ng mga stakeholders, saan sila nag-impact, saan, ayun. Then, one thing to take note lang is yung naglagay ako ng coffee bar since sabi ko nga kanina parang customers should be allowed to brew their own coffee na best fit for their caffeine tolerance. So, ayun, parang naglagay ako ng hiwalay na space for the parang kumbaga yung commercial side of it, yung business side, then yung coffee bar which is parang for everyone to make their own coffee. So, and more for the gym goers siya. Kasi sila yung nandun for exercise. So, ayun, from this flowchart, actually from the 3 flowcharts na pinakita ko, gumawa ng synthesis. So, ito na yung mga activities ng stakeholders and steps when it comes coffee and saan nag-interact lahat ng activities na yun. So, ayun. So, if you're a customer, you have the choice to harvest your coffee or you can buy coffee or you can brew your own coffee. So, and then yung producer, they maintain the plants, they also harvest the plants and they process the cherries na harvest. So yun yung pupunta sa storage, then yun yung brew ng baristas. Okay. So for my party diagram, medyo konti lang siya pero yung isa kong idea since parang na-clear na medyo process ng harvest since is binipick yung cherries and yung collection. Parang gawa sa typical is parang naglalag sila ng sobrang laking tarp. Then dun mahuhulog lahat ng cherry. Then parang nila yung tarp para i-collect mga na-harvest. So instead of that, naisip ko gumamit ng slope, which is parang part na rin siya ng building or specifically stairs. Yung slope na yun para kumbaga funnel yung cherries main collection. And ito idea is parang kung magiging level yung farm, parang pwede rin gamitin yung balconies na parang hulog siya into a collection area. Then this one parang pinaghalawang idea. So meron siyang multiple levels. Ginawa siya na and since building siya and hindi ko lang isang floor yung farm, parang ginawa ko na lang siyang expandable vertically. So yeah, and I also took out of the dimensions na mentioned earlier. So yeah. Then another, ito is the last term idea. Mushroom na na nag-grow from used coffee grounds. So hindi ko talaga yung research, pero basically when you mix used coffee grounds with a homespun organic material, parang pwede kang mag-grow ng mushroom na pwede tuin. To make it short, meron dalawang tests. Incubation phase, yung itsura niya, incubation, which parang grow lang dun sa loob ng bag, yung may psyllium. Then, once na siya dun, butasan yung para lumabas yung mushroom. So, ito yung itsura niya. So, ako siyang part ng structure. So, parang gumawa ko modules na hindi na kailangan kasi ang ginagamit usually sa mushrooms is parang plastic bag, so hindi siya sustainable. So ginawa ko to para siya, mas reusable. So dito nilalagay yung mushroom, yung grounds mixture. Then when fully cultivated na yung mycelium, i-twist mo lang yung module to allow the mushrooms to grow sa yun. Pero this is just detail kung itsura ng mushroom farm. Pero inisip saan siya ilo-locate building. So kasi since incubation phase, kailangan ng dark and mid space. Then yung fruiting naman kailangan open space, may light. Parang inisip ko ilagay sa area na may humidity. So yung shower, nilocate ko siya likod ng area, ng shower and ng coffee bar. So the idea is during the incubation, nakasundo yung farm. So siya sa loob. Pero at the same time, meron louvers to moist to allow the humidity come the shower area. Pumasok siya doon sa farm and cultivate mycelium. Then once after I think weeks, once fully cultivated yung mushroom, the fruiting phase begin to i-open na yung wall partition, then allows the modules constantly, kailangan kasi siyang i-spray water every few hours. So that's the idea. Then the wall is closed para hindi pumapasok yung air, hindi tumatang air from the shop. So then basically idea ko is ako lang siyang building. So knowing parang dun sa lahat of charts and yung diagrams ko, parang ko-binase yung diagram how things connects to yung magkakabi. So this one is for the floor. The first floor mainly is the pay area. So ayan. Then the second floor is the yung coffee farm. Second and third yung coffee farm. Then, ito yung pinakita kanina, the coffee bar and the shops, parang sila pero hindi connected. So, then third floor is coffee farm area and just next of the gym. So this is how it like in 3D. So it's a hybrid of a gym and cafe. So ayan. Yan lang, sir.
Okay, can we go to the diagram showing the stairs? Yeah, that one. Okay. So the moment you synthesize everything, the next one, please, Julian. No, not that one. Yeah, that one. Uh, no, the next one, the one with the stairs. Yeah, no. Yeah, okay. So
Wait, sir. Sorry, delay.
okay, so we don't want a lot of dead spaces in your building, all right? So maybe I suggest that the entire building is like an obstacle course that will allow people to burn their calories. But of course, you still have the gym area with the equipment. So you can play with forms, you can play with ramps, you can play with, different areas for, like a playful area for an activity. I remember there's a gym we're in, like it's an obstacle course na you can do pull-ups and then may nagbabaras ka pa. I forgot the name eh. But I'm sure you know what I mean. But in your case, it can be more vertical, and that way you can spread out where the coffee bean are being harvested, and then it slides down to the areas where you want it to go. Do you know what I mean? And then make sure lang that where they all land will be a central area. Do you get it?
Okay, sir. Actually, may nagkaroon ako ng idea na imbes na may stairs, then may balconies, parang what if it's just a whole spiral ng ano na lang. Para mas...
Make it more playful.
Parang,
Don't just limit it to the spiral. No? Think of an obstacle course.
Obstacle course. Sige, sir.
Like
The
vertical, so that you can really play with it. Don't simplify it like you're designing a house, na building. So you can be playful with your proposal because you're dealing with people who want a lot of activity so that they can burn their calories to be in a caloric deficit. But of course, you still have the gym area. You can probably
Yes,
explore the idea of um, like different locations for different weights if you're more familiar with it.
Yes.
Yeah. Why are you introducing the mushroom? I'm not so sure.
Medyo unrelated nga yun, sir, kasi idea ko na siya before ko pa nilagay yung gym program. So parang naiwan na lang siya na ano. Pero ang iniisip ko kasi, sir, if maglalagay ako ng gym, parang pwede ko sigurong gamitin yung, since may movement yung mga machines doon, parang pwede ko siguro gamitin yung movement ng mga tao para paggalawin yung ibang parts ng cafe, like siguro yung roastery para umikot yung coffee. Parang controlled siya pero hindi ko lang siya na masyado na explore masyado.
Yeah, you can explore that definitely. All right, but the mushroom, I'm not so sure. It doesn't feel cohesive enough. But yeah, the coffee, the gym makes sense. And but I think you need to create a more playful building rather than this, because it looks like a conventional building with plants.
Actually, na parang magkakahiwalay yung gym, farm, tsaka yung cafe ko. So, I guess I'll explore yung cohesiveness na lang.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Julian. Do you have questions pala?
Wala na po.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so my form is derived from my sun carving from before. Since yung sun carving ko, it's already related to my plant, which is weed. cannabis. So there's a large opening on the top to let in the light since my plant is intensive of light requirements. So I iterated it to my own way. Ay, this is the wind circulation. Ginamit ko lang ulit para mapakita yung ginawa ko dati. So this is the form, the top view. And then, disclaimer lang, di ko alam kung paano pa siya i-model. So medyo sira-sira pa siya at the moment. But then I'm working on it pa.
What's that ba? The one on the right.
This is the view from here, the entrance here. So this is the view. So this is from here. Ito. This is from here. Looking into here. So what I did is, instead of funneling the light onto a small space, inopen up ko pa siya and integrate with the other perforations na mas malaki para parang singular opening lang siya. And then this is the section, pero like I said, mali-mali pa siya kasi sira-sira. But here's the idea, like the lower floor is gonna be the most populated area. So I wanted to introduce a lot of light, but eliminating the afternoon sun. So this is west side, this is east side. So yun. That's why there's an opening here, just like my sun carving. And then to bridge the gaps, I'm gonna use perforated steel grates para to open it up for the floor surface area on the voids. Ay, wait lang, sorry. Para continuous yung flow ng visual, paano ko ba para hindi ma-interrupt yung form, which is yung curved. So kaya siya perforated. But I'm still working on the idea. Maybe there's a better material for it. And then the curved sides are gonna be using steel meshes para it's almost invisible, para yung light mas masusulit sa sun. Don't know if that makes sense. Yun lang naman for that. And then inulit ko yung floor plan ko from the start using the new form I made. So the form, I cut it into 4 planes. So this is the form na nakakat. So from that, I started my floor plan. That's based on the flow chart I made before. So this is the reception area, the seating area, and the dispensing area. So what I did in my floor plan is the dispensing area is supposed to be connected to almost all the programs in my building. But then, yung massage area ko, it's too big to be accommodated onto the ground floor. So I placed it on the second floor instead here. So it's still almost applicable. So going here can go up the stairs to go to the massage area. And then the massage area has its own shower area here na katabi ng CR. And then beside that is the processing area. So how it works is the plants here on the 3rd floor is gonna be stored on this area and then cut and filtered on this area and then directly moved here. So aligned tong dalawang rooms on top of each other para you just drop the material or products to be processed. And then from here, It's gonna circulate here, then go downstairs to the shops and the market and the bakery. So this one naman is, instead of using stairs, I used the terraces which I proposed last week, yung etong terraces. So kaya siya ganun. Pero I haven't really laid out the single pieces kasi it's gonna take some time and di ako abot sa deadline today. But the idea is almost everything is gonna be using the modules I made like this. So dikit-dikit to make the form. And then the rest of the area is gonna be used as the planting area. And then the voids, yung sinasabi ko kanina, yung perforated floor, yung steel grates, it's gonna be used on the voids para it's still usable for light work, like seating area or tai chi. They can use that, but the processes are not gonna be placed on the voids. This is the module na ginamit doon. This is the perspective. So the idea is to have a lot of vertical rods. For I think this one is for the experience. I think I like seeing vertical rods na marami. Kasi di ba sir, may na-mention ko dati there's two kinds of architects. Like there's one experiential and the other one is yung sa details. So the cave-like feature of the form is more of the experiential, and this is experiential and detail. Parang yung pagkakaintindi ko sa sinabi niyo before, sir.
Dami mo na ako sinabi.
May sinabi ko, sir, dati. Tinatandaan ko yan. And then, this is the flow, the synthesis na I did before. But then, nilagay ko lang ulit kasi may mga binago kong arrows, like, sa storage, ganun. But then, it's very minor. That's all.
Okay, so I think you have a better understanding of what I was trying to say when talking about the tectonics, because I explained it to you guys. But I think what we're missing here is the idea of interiority, as we designed the exterior very different from the interior. And the organism in the interior is very different from the outside. That's what I worry about, because again, it's very compartmental. Like you think about the envelope and then you think of the interior differently. Can we go to yung sinasabi may rod, yeah, that one, no? So it's basically just an element in the inside. It didn't really affect what's happening on the outside. It's like you have a very Zaha-ish S type of exterior. So it's a compartmentalist type of tendency, and you can put it's not different from creating a room and then putting a machine inside. So that's my problem with this with the idea. Maybe you can explore the next. Yeah.
So the idea kasi na I want to express on the form is kasi it's folded metal. So it's curved, lahat siya curved. I don't want to see it as hexagon kasi.
Yeah, it's fine. No, I'm talking about the outside and the inside.
Yun, so from the folded metal, so I wanted to fold din. So parang folded din siya. Kasi yung sun carving ko, it's very sharp edged.
No, you're talking about, yeah, I get what you mean. But like, what is the role of the envelope with the interior? Is it just a compartment? Is it just a container? Or is it part of the process? So I'm pushing you to think in advance. I think think this through further in a way that the exterior has a role in the process, not just as a shell that represents the curvilinear visual language that you have in the inside. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So
Yes.
so it's just a container right now. So what makes this nicer lang with the others that it's not a box. Okay, so maybe there's an idea behind. Can we go back to the mirror-like surface? In a way, I kind of like it because probably you're also saying that this is what you see when you have cannabis. So I mean, that's about it. But it's still a compartment. It's a container. That's why when you were explaining the floor plan, can you go to the floor plan with the bullet points? Yeah, and so yeah, it's still this alone will tell you that it's a compartmentalist tendency. Like you have a room and then you put something inside. Do you get it? So think of it as an experience because a building envelope like this exists in buildings like the designed by Zaha did for a museum, especially in Korea. Alam mo, but it's just a shell. It's just a container. It's not really part of the system. If you are talking about the what Tracy produced today, it's an entire system. Even the outside and the walls it will produce will play a role. Ang nangyari kasi with this one, can you go to the interior with the hexagon, curvilinear hexagon? Nagmukha siya exhibit eh. Hindi yan. Not that one.
Which one, sir?
Yan. Yan. Okay? Para like a gallery. You're so, I find it beautiful myself. But you have a wall and then you have that. So it's not really a system. Basically, this image alone tells me that I can put this anywhere. It's not special to my building, to your building.
Mm, can I say na since this is like I said yung folded, I think I can manipulate this one to match the shape of the curves.
Yes, you can
So
see it, but I don't believe it's just for me. It's an excuse. You didn't really use the exterior as a part of the system.
mm,
Do you get it? So it's just an alibi. I mean, but if you're going to be authentic with the process and the system that you're creating, your exterior is totally just a wall, just a
okay.
container. Do you get it? So it's not really part of the entire thing. Kunyari lang, the simplistic example I could provide is the one of Tracy. Although she hasn't thought of the envelope, but if you think of it as uh, a wall of plants, etc., uh, the entire thing has a role: blocking of light, blocking of water, etc. Uh, and yeah, so here kasi it's like a container that is very interesting, it is fluid, it is beautiful, but it's just like any building. Like whatever you have inside, you can put it in SDA.
Okay, I see your point.
Okay? So
Okay.
wala siyang connection, wala siyang role. So yeah. Okay? So push lang.
Okay.
Pero konti na lang 'yan.
So
I'm not making it hard on you, but that's how I'm reading it.
mm, so
Okay?
my next step is to
Rethink about the exterior. How can it help in the propagation of the kasi nag-rely ka lang sa sa tawag dito, ultraviolet light, ultraviolet light, ultraviolet ray
mm,
ng
actually
artificial.
dito ko kasi ang kailangan ko lang talaga yung sa sun carving, yung etong opening and this opening.
Yeah,
So in-apply ko lang siya.
kaya nga sabi ko at the very beginning of sun carving, don't fall in love with the sun carving because it's just a basis for exposure of light, etc. But towards the end of it, it's all about an entire system.
Okay.
Kasi ito itong sun carving na to applicable to sa previous edition ng design na talagang separate lang yung shell. And this one kasi in the creative typology direction, you need to think of the the entire thing, not just as a cover, not just a covering.
Okay.
Kasi sinabi ko dating sun carving, I remember clarifying it. Uh, it's just a basis for how you position your site, and it's not going to be the final form. Okay, it will all depend on the process and the system that you create. And then so far, you have a system inside that doesn't really relate with the outside, that or doesn't really work with the outside. It's a better statement. It needs to work with the outside.
Okay.
Okay, I know
Okay, sir.
something that you don't want to hear, but I think you can, with your capability, I think you can push for it. Don't fall in love with this form yet, because there's a museum in Korea that looks like this. And the idea that you created in the interior, I think, can still generate another idea that you can still expand it, so that you can produce an exterior that is working with the interior.
Okay. So, sir, ulit ako sa form and sa flow chart.
Oh,
I
just
mean,
keep in
floor
mind
plan.
that carving, it's not totally useless. It's just basically for you to have an intuition where to position the openings, etc. So yun. Actually, that's
Okay,
why,
sige.
yun. So, ayun. Okay?
Gets ko naman, sir.
Okay, sige. Thank you, Lance. May question
Okay,
ka ba?
thank you, sir.
Okay, bye.
Hindi ko lang sure kung paano ko ulitin. Kasi,
I mean, you can use this form for all you know. I mean, just think of how you're going to relate the exterior to the interior. Kasi right now, everything is enclosed. Do you know what I mean? Everything is, it's like a warehouse with a different, but they don't care about the outside. Well, you do in this form because it looks beautiful, but what does it, what good does it do with the process?
okay.
You know what I mean?
So, which parts can I salvage sa process na to? Yung sun carving,
No, I mean,
okay.
like I said, the sun carving is not totally useless. Probably this can still work. You just need to think of the exterior as part of the system. Right now, it's not part of the system. You can still retain this form, pero don't make it a, completely walled up skin, because it is a container. I mean, maybe you can change some part of it that it interacts with your elements in the interior, with the process in the interior. You know what I mean?
Okay, sir, I get it.
O yun. Okay?
Sige, sir.
Alright, sige.
Okay, thank you.
Diba?
I'm still unsure about my form because I was trying to think of parang ways I could iterate it to change the form, but I'm struggling. So what I did na lang was I sort of I remember you mentioned last week how I could incorporate like my rope idea throughout my structure. So I incorporated my previous party with the rope idea into different parts of my structure.
Okay.
So here. So for this one, sir, what I did was I had a previous sheet where I made partitions using the abaca fiber rope now weaving. So the way I did it was um the reason these are just samples of what I did. So certain areas are more clustered while others are more have larger gaps. The reason for this is because I wanted to use these partitions for my market. I would be using them to serve as it's sort of like modular stalls. So because my market is I'll be getting small businesses within my area because I found based on the mapping exercises that there were a lot of small businesses in my area. So what I wanted was to sort of have an area for all of them to gather in one place. and then they would be able to use this space um, to have like one big market. And then so um, I used the ropes to sort of create the walls and create openings.
Okay.
The result of that is so it looks something like this,
Okay.
and then close up is like this.
Okay.
Okay. And sir, so you also mentioned that I could use it for my exterior since I also found that in general my area is has 360 uh has a lot of light coming into it. Well, so part of that would be increased heat from the sun. So I wanted to use the rope system in a way that it would block out the sun in certain areas, while other areas where the weaving would be larger, I could have gaps for the sun to enter. So this is just a sample pattern that could be done using the ropes. And then in terms of application on the structure, so it would be um, sort of like a rope facade on the structure.
Okay.
And then another application of the rope was the one I previously explained as the catchment for my coconut, as a catchment for the coconut, since um, coconuts can be, what do you call this, can be harvested monthly, but if you decide not to harvest per month, they will naturally fall on their own. So this system also sort of serves as a way to harvest the coconuts without causing harm to the people in the structure, because it's common for people to get injured when coconuts fall on them.
Okay.
Yeah, sir.
That's it.
Sir, that's it.
Okay, sorry. Kala ko may papakita ka pa eh. So anyway, sige, I like the imagery on the wall of coconut. Can we go back to that where the vendor is located? Maybe you just need to define the program that you're thinking of. But yeah, I imagine it's like a structure of baskets made of abaca. Like I can imagine people seated like on a hammock, drinking coconut, and then there are hammocks where it's filled with coconut shells. You know what I mean? Like probably
Okay.
you can create a system wherein you have freshly harvested coconuts, and then that creates a form of an abaca hammock. I don't know, or like a basket suspended in the ceiling. I don't know yet. Then probably, diba, you can manage the opening. That's where the vendor will get the coconut. And then probably there's also a hammock uh, meant for disposal. You know, if you're done with the coconut, you put all the discarded shells. You know what I mean? So you create a
Okay.
system out of these hammocks.
Yeah, sir. So I sort of did that. It's just I'm struggling to um present it back, because the way I was planning on doing that was um it's like tubes, but then instead of it being made out of a certain material, it being made out of rope. So you drop um the used up coconut husk and shell, and then that will be transported directly to my first floor, because
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
So after all the used coconuts, they go here to the husk storage
Okay.
to be dried, and then once they're dried, there's another storage area where they can be spun into rope.
Okay.
So it's the used coconuts that's gonna result in all the rope that's gonna
Very
be
good.
in the structure.
I'm happy that somehow you're not neglecting the process behind it, because I saw the previous proposal sort of forgot that they need to show the step-by-step procedure, and I'm glad that you are showing it. What do you call that? And then when I say you create a system, like you are already using the abaca rope, and then if you can create an organizational system using that, the basket system using that, you already started with the catchment, di ba? Then you already introduce the divider, di ba? So and then now
Yeah.
you're you can probably introduce it as an organizational system, like an abaka for storage, abaka for discarded items, abaka for hanging out, for sipping the coconut, etc. So it's all abaka. So you are surrounded by this coconut product and the coconut itself. So the brand is very consistent and very cohesive. Regarding your question about iteration, and I know
Yes.
when I think I realized what you meant by that question when I saw your sun carving. This is in
Yeah.
relation to the question to my response to Lance about the sun carving because he might have gotten attached to the sun carving. Uh, you can still change it, like what Tracy did. What is more relevant?
Yes.
No? So
Like I No, it's okay. Go finish first, sir.
kasi what matters with the sun carving, like I said with Lance, is that you're just sensitive with the location of your openings, the wind direction, etc. That's my only purpose why we did the sun carving. But that should not be the end all of your form because
Yeah.
the form should be based on the system and the process that you created.
Okay.
You get it? The sun carving kasi, I just introduce it because a lot of you guys were not familiar with it as I introduced it to my former students as a basis for their very definitive project, which is a house. To get it, yun talagang basis nila, yung sun carving. So in this case kasi, ang priority natin is the system that you will create.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then and in a way, nakaproduce ka na-define mo na with the abakarup eh. So you just need to keep developing it. So but keeping in mind and being sensitive with the site conditions, light,
Mm-hmm.
heat, and wind. All right? Yun lang ang purpose ng sun carving. That's why I wasn't really, like you were presenting it, oo lang ako, no, kasi tama naman. Pero kasi in my head, alam ko, I know that it's still going to change later on and shouldn't be the basis. Okay?
Yeah. Because sir, I hate the sun carving so much. And I don't know how to change it.
Yeah. It's just basically to teach you because there are cases wherein it's not applicable. Uh,
Yeah.
I remember when Big Bjarki Ingels was still new, not naman new, but becoming popular. How we admired him because he has all these conditions affecting his form. He carves the architecture based on the condition. He doesn't care how it ends up. Do you get it? And that's sort of admirable. So basically, that's the idea behind the sun carving is the same, but it shouldn't be the basis of it because I know that uh, the process, the design process, is still um, doesn't end there, and it can still be the design can still be polished, can still be developed from that phase.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sige. Do you have
Okay.
questions and concerns?
Um, I no, I don't think so, sir. I'll just message you again.
Okay, but
If ever.
so somehow I I'm already seeing a clear direction. Now that I'm seeing the uh abaka fabric, no, sorry, the abaka wall system that you created. Um, I think it can if you can make everything like that better.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sige. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Can see it.
Okay, so I'll start with the iteration that I ended up with this week. I'll just preface this by saying that, of course, it's nothing final yet, but I wanted to tweak it based on my initial visions and the program I had in mind. So I while I was tweaking, I was at the same time I was sort of sketching it out. Ideally, how like crazy I guess it could go, or if it looks like the vision I had in mind. So I stuck with my terrace, concentric terrace form. So here in the right wing area is the terrace cultivation of my abaca plants, which I'll explain later. And then as you go up the structure, the users will experience the harvesting, I mean the fiber extraction process. And by the time you reach the top, um, I this is where I sort of found a new idea to sort of add an intercrop, which is turmeric, because turmeric is a suggested intercrop by the Philippine fiber industry for abaca, because it would sort of encourage better yield for both plants. And the use for this turmeric is to um, produce organic dye, as well as help in the aspect of if the workers within the area would um, feel the stress of like a day's work where a lot of like manual labor of like moving the luminous it's a good anti-inflammatory product that I could potentially use. So with that, I was thinking about continuing the cultivation up in the rooftop area with the intercrop, because based on my calculations, one abaca tree can only produce 2 meters of fabric. So potentially, if this is a semi-mass producing type of factory, um, the around 50 trees would produce 100 meters of fabric only, which would produce 20 to 50 garments in a year. So I think the more the trees are, the better uh, the program will function. Because without it, I guess parang the program wouldn't be as dynamic as it would because of the lack of production. So yeah, having to allocate space for the abaca production. And then as you move towards this bridging area, I plan to have a sort of water feature that is led from the dyeing area in this left wing. So dyeing area having to need a lot of um, water. I plan for the water flow to go from the dyeing area to the where you wash the fibers, which is in this bridging area, and somehow also use that flow of water, maybe recycle it into water that can irrigate the plants, and from that it goes all the way down as a feature in this area as well. So from the dyeing area up here, this structure will be my main space, or like the most the space that has the most character, I guess, in my opinion, which is the weaving area, performance area, and on the bottom would be a retail area. So this week I was I'll start with this one, because I mentioned before how I wanted to integrate the concentric idea with the sort of labyrinth pedestrian or walking experience through the abaca plantation. So as of now, I don't have. I'm still figuring out how I want to design the area in a way where um, it could also integrate a communal space outside. But as of now, I had to check if the amount of trees that I wanted to have for this area would fit in the space. So yeah, I mentioned how had at least 50 trees within the area. So it's something I have to work with if having to move it all the way, having to add all the way up in the roof area also. And then potentially the roof area would also have a seating area like the way Greek theater. I was inspired by the form of Greek theaters because it's also a good system for acoustics in an open space. So I was thinking about when you suggested the idea of having like incorporating I guess like fashion into the program. So because one of the stakeholders or the users that I included were designers or textile consumers, it could also be an events place where they could host runway shows. So it could serve as like a stage of sorts where seating area being surrounded by the plants that produce those fabrics. And then another thing that I worked on this week was um the central space of my structure, which is the weaving, the performance area where the weaving is done. So I'll just read this because I find it hard explaining it thoroughly. So the users go through a sensory experience led by the flow of woven fabric from its weaving phase to beating to burnishing and towards its storage phase. Because weaving instruments in itself produce rhythmic sounds, the design encourages the positive reception of the that sound that the weaving process produces by changing it into sort of weaving instruments that when used in orchestration creates a sort of celebratory atmosphere and sense of togetherness um, by having performances in this performance bit that I have below. And that idea would promote like releasing the stresses of the day's work. Like I imagine getting people from the market near parallel to the structure coming and relaxing after a day's worth of selling, or like residents nearby coming and just enjoying the time here. And then so here I wrote the pit is also designed to capture the user's attention and appreciation towards the euphoric rhythmic sound envelope, colorful fabrics, and the dedicated artisans working in orchestration up above. In a way, it mimics the festive spirit of the Filipino people. So I imagine the users when they're down here, like dancing or being together in this recreational space. When they look up, it's like you see the people producing the sounds and the colorful fabrics like descending, and you just like everything's like enveloping, I guess. So it sort of creates like that uh church-like, cathedral-like atmosphere, as well as like a festive spirit. And then so um the way not designed, but I sort of made this model just to show the flow of how I want the general space to function. but I'm not yet happy with the with the design of it. Like I feel like it could be improved, but the idea is to have these loom machines in a way like how in churches the pipe organs are up there in the balcony, something like that. And then as it descends, there are gonna be balconies like in theater balconies. I was inspired by like theater balconies and that um suspended feature where users or artisans can enter and just interactively beat or burnish the fabric. And then and I created a performance bit where yun nga, like when you they could have like invited performances where they celebrate Filipino culture or tradition, or like the users could just enjoy like and dance or have fun in the center. But then okay. Oh wait, sorry. Here um the I was thinking about how the plant in itself could incorporate in the space, because as of now it feels like it's only the product of the plant, which is the fabric, that's being highlighted. So um the most I could think of was is to create a system where, of course, since the dyeing process and the the drying process of like the fiber extraction, it's still part of the process and it can't be neglected. So I was thinking about how, because the fiber is a good sound absorber, it could sort of envelope the exterior in a way where the sound wouldn't necessarily uh the sound from outside, which is like the market noise, wouldn't penetrate into the inside, nor would the sound inside sort of not distract, but I guess there's just a juxtaposition between the sounds from the inside and outside, and the I guess the fibers of the abaca could sort of envelope it in a sort of curtain wall type for the drying process or the dyeing process, sort of as act as an architectural feature with a function, which is to mitigate the sound. And then here I'm showing the elevation of the system. Yeah, it's just to show that they're still divided into floors, which I'm trying to figure out the system of, because I want the users to sort of circulate it, the the system going all the way down, and here in the bottom is where the fabrics are being stored. And it's it's not a closed space. I guess it's the space incorporates a retail area, which I'm yet to explore. Where after the weaving, this is where the tailors and the seamstresses of the market, um, I integrate their businesses into this area where they could get these fabrics and produce them or customize them for the users that experience the place. So yep. And then here I just broke down the individual system. I'm not sure exactly what material I'm planning to use, but if ever, based on the tools that like the indigenous people use for beating of the fabrics, they use like wood backing and wood instruments. So I'm planning to uh, experiment with the wood material for most of my structure. So yeah. I think that's all I have so far.
Okay, so what do you call it? With this kind of architecture that you're thinking of, um, set aside your bias on the
Mhm.
uh, on the on the milestone that you already accomplished. Uh, what other programs can you think of? Just curious, huh? Don't get rattled about it.
Right now, the things that are sticking with me are the retail area and an open event space for uh fashion events, which is like, I guess, fashion shows, runway shows, where designers can present their I guess their designs
Okay,
and do a more public.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. It's funny that you said event because personally I'm leaning towards events, but also the marketplace. But the reason why I was leaning towards events because I remember going to a ballroom for either a wedding or for a debut or for another event. Like they have those curtains, and normally it's being replaced. Maybe it can be dressed up like that is how I imagine the space to be like it's a rentable event space wherein it can be
Mm-hmm.
dressed by the fabric that you create, and that way you're not so pressured to produce a lot of fabric, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time and at the same time uh actually one of the things that we need to solve in general for for this entire class is to how to maximize the yield of of your building of your plant like
The plant.
the
Yeah.
plant like, try to create an architecture in a way you started with it already by creating a terracing configuration maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe it spreads out uh even bigger so you can
Yeah.
double the production and so that you're not pressured about producing a lot
Yeah.
so so basically, you're getting there. Maybe you just need to define, to develop, a more a bigger farm area for the abaca, and then
Mm-hmm.
probably below, it's an event space that is configurable that can be dressed into different, uh, may dyeing process ka pa, di ba?
Yeah. I'm planning to have that on the roof, in the rooftop area with the water feature.
Okay, okay.
Wait, sir, what do you mean by yung when you were mentioning the ballroom thing with the dressing of the fabrics?
No, I was referring to in ballrooms naman kasi it's fixed na. It depends on the curtain of the hotel. It's fixed already. Now we're just
Yeah.
thinking that I remember your proposal before, like a performance space, and then the
Yeah.
fabric sets the mood for it,
Mm-hmm.
and fabrics help in in, in doing so. So yeah, you can have a market, you can have an event space. It's um Yeah, I think I can. Those ideas can work well, but we need to solve the idea of the yield. The problem of the yield. It needs to be maximized.
Yeah, the yield. Mm.
Yeah, but other than that, it's getting there. Ayun lang, yung yield lang talaga. Like try to imagine it as like a like a building filled with the baka, but behind it there's a fabric making and there's an event space and a market area.
Mm.
Do you get it? Because I'll try to look for the building designed by my design 5 students. It's an water irrigation, but at the same time, it functions like a playground, water playground for the community, and an aqueduct as well for the plants. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a really nice proposal, and your terracing configuration sorts of reminds me of that, uh, the the design language. Um, but essentially, it is an aqueduct. It's a water irrigation. But you know, it it provided venues for the kids to play in the water, wading
Yeah.
area. like that. So like it's really about the plant and then the program it can generate.
Yeah.
Oh, yun.
Okay. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think that's one thing. I noticed like when Tracy was saying how she sort of got stuck with her plant. I realized that abaca, there's nothing I could think of na could be incorporated into a program because uh it's used industrially. So
Because
that's where
you are
sort of lean towards, yeah.
you are not necessarily because you are thinking of it as a product right away. Uh,
Yeah.
what everyone was missing on is another direction, which is creating an architecture, an innovation wherein you can maximize the yield, and the architecture
Mm-hmm.
will somewhat give you a clue of what kind of program it can generate you.
Mm-hmm.
You get it? Just like what happened with Tracy. She was thinking of the Mongo pod, although I wasn't really keen on the market idea, but it gave me an idea that probably I could suggest a congregational space because it reminded me of the cathedral space of a church. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is, looking at from the perspective of the plant, of the propagation of the plant using architecture. In your case kasi, you thought of the plant as a product, and the product,
Yeah.
yun. So that's why now I'm suggesting maybe think of how you can maximize the yield. You can still stick with the program that you're thinking of, but who knows? Aga pa naman, kung medyo maaga pa naman. Ah,
Yeah.
baka pwede pang mag-iba yung program. Baka lang ha. Pero right now, the program works. Even if
Okay.
you expand the, even if you expand the tree planting area.
Sorry, sir, what? Even if I would?
Expand the
Oh,
tree.
expand. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but be open to ideas. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
But don't get rattled because the existing can still work even if you expand the planting area.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
what I'm sharing now is the other direction. Uh, an example was what my student did nga with the aqueduct. And then, I'll try
Mm-hmm.
to look for an image. They produce a very nice model eh. Naka ano pa yun, naka laser cut.
Mm, okay.
Yeah, I'll look for it. So there.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Any
Yeah.
questions?
None so far.
Okay, sige. Thank you, Trace. Jamil.
Thank you, sir.